Caitlin Collins just made the kind of mistake that ends careers, live on national television. What unfolded in the next 30 seconds left Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett speechless for all the right reasons, and may have shattered Collins's reputation for good. Before we break down this seismic exchange, don't forget to subscribe and like this video so you never miss a single second of political drama that's flipping DC upside down. It all started under the glaring lights of CNN's primetime studio. Caitlin Collins, immaculately dressed in a crisp navy blazer, was in full command of the set. At just 31, Collins had rocketed to the top, earning a spot as the face of The Source with Caitlin Collins. Known for her fearless interviews and relentless questioning, she'd become a ratings magnet. But across from her sat a storm she hadn't forecasted. Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett, 43, Texas Democrat, civil rights attorney, and former state legislator. A woman who'd made a career out of turning ambushes into victory speeches. The segment was supposed to cover new developments in Congress. Instead, Collins opened with a thinly veiled jab. Congresswoman Crockett, looking at your resume, do you really believe you're qualified to be weighing in on such complex legal matters? Silence. Even behind the cameras, producers exchanged wary glances. This wasn't journalism. This was provocation. Crockett, composed but clearly unamused, leaned in ever so slightly. I'm sorry. Could you repeat that? She asked, her tone glacial. Collins, misreading Crockett's poise as uncertainty, doubled down. Given your limited experience, isn't it presumptuous to claim expertise in areas that require decades of legal work? Big mistake. What Collins failed to grasp was that she wasn't facing a paper politician. Crockett had spent years in courtrooms, arguing before judges, defending the innocent, writing laws, and confronting power. She didn't rattle. She recalibrated. Are you finished? Crockett asked calmly, her voice now edged with steel. Collins nodded, confused. Then came the switch. Let's clarify something, Crockett began. You brought me on this show to discuss legislation and policy, yet here we are, with you questioning whether my career even qualifies me to speak on the subject, so let me set the record straight. The storm had arrived. What followed was a systematic, bulletproof takedown that transformed the power dynamics of the room in real time. Crockett listed her qualifications: her law degree from the University of Houston, 15 years of legal practice, her time as a public defender, her record as a civil rights lawyer, and her legislative accomplishments. House Bill 186 on bail reform, HB 2754 on expungement, HB 1198 on discrimination protections. One after another, she laid out her resume like legal ammunition. Then, she flipped the interview on its head. Miss Collins, she said with surgical precision, where did you earn your law degree? How many cases have you argued? How many laws have you written? Collins stammered. I'm a journalist. Exactly. Crockett leaned forward. You're a journalist, and yet you've positioned yourself as an authority over my qualifications. Do you see the irony? The silence in the studio was deafening, but Crockett wasn't done. She pulled out a folder and began referencing the very bills she had authored, the courtroom battles she had fought, and the communities she had served. Every statement Collins had made began to collapse under the weight of evidence. Then came the kill shot. You said legal experts question my background. Name them. Tell us their credentials. Collins froze. I can't reveal sources. Crockett cut in. Because they don't exist. This wasn't journalism. It was a setup, a hit piece. And you made one fatal error. You underestimated me. Collins's face flushed, then paled. She fumbled for her notes, but the damage was done. Millions of viewers watched as the so-called ambush unraveled into a public self-own. Jasmine Crockett hadn't just defended herself. She obliterated the very premise of the attack. Her message was clear. You don't get to define the qualifications of a woman who's lived the work you merely question. By the time the segment ended, the internet was ablaze. Clips flooded social media. Journalists, activists, and voters weighed in. Hashtags trended. Commentators declared it one of the most lopsided interviews in modern political media. Crockett walked out of that studio with her reputation bulletproof. Collins, she walked out with hers in tatters. "This is what real qualifications look like," Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett declared, her voice steady, deliberate, like a closing argument that had already won the jury. 15 years of legal experience, 4 years in the state legislature, multiple successful bills, a seat on the House Judiciary Committee, and a lifelong commitment to civil rights, criminal justice reform, and economic opportunity. She let the weight of each credential settle in the room like stone. "But you know what really matters?" she continued. "The trust of the voters. The people of Texas's 30th District looked at my record, my experience, and my vision for the future, and they chose me. I don't need your permission, Ms. Collins, and I certainly don't need your approval." Kaitlan Collins, scrambling, tried one last play. "Congresswoman, I think you're being a bit defensive." Crockett's eyes narrowed. "Defensive?" she echoed, her tone sharpening like a scalpel. "Miss Collins, I'm not being defensive, I'm being accurate. There's a difference, though I understand why that might be hard for you to recognize." The room froze. Then, with poise forged from years in the courtroom, Crockett gathered her notes and stood. "I came here to talk policy," she said, calmly. "To discuss the real work we're doing for the American people. Instead, you wasted everyone's time with a lazy, uninformed attack on my qualifications. You embarrassed yourself. You embarrassed your network. And you reminded the American people why trust in mainstream media is crumbling." She turned toward the camera. "To the viewers at home, you deserve better. You deserve journalists who do their homework, who ask real questions, who show respect for the democratic process. What happened here tonight wasn't journalism. It was theater. And frankly, it was beneath the dignity of this institution." And with that, Jasmine Crockett exited the CNN studio, leaving behind a host stunned into silence and an audience that had just witnessed a televised takedown so complete it felt historical. Social media didn't just react, it erupted. Within minutes, clips of Crockett's surgical dissection of Collins flooded TikTok, X, formerly Twitter, YouTube, and Instagram. The hashtag #ShockCrockettDestroysCollins trended globally within the hour, followed closely by "Jock Qualified Queen" and "To Lawyer Up." A prominent civil rights attorney posted, "I've watched Jasmine Crockett in court. This is who she is, brilliant, relentless, unshakable." Collins walked into a buzzsaw. The post racked up 60,000 likes in hours. Even conservative voices took notice. Charlie Kirk tweeted, "I don't agree with Crockett on much, but that was a masterclass in being prepared. Collins got cooked." Thousands shared it, left, right, and center. But the true wildfire came from ordinary people. A viral TikTok by a young black woman lawyer hit 2.3 million views. This is what it looks like when someone underestimates a black woman who's done the work. Jasmine Crockett just became my hero. Cable news was forced to cover it. Fox News, MSNBC, News Nation, everyone had a take. Even Tucker Carlson, of all people, said, "Put politics aside, this was a total obliteration." Collins brought a butter knife to a courtroom. Stephen Colbert dedicated an entire segment. When you try to come for someone's resume, maybe, just maybe, don't do it when yours is made of paper mache. SNL announced a cold open. The sketch became one of their most watched episodes of the year. International press followed suit. The BBC ran a piece on the rise of performance journalism, using the interview as Exhibit A. Le Monde in France called it a cautionary tale of American infotainment overtaking factual reporting. Meme culture did its thing. One image had a 2-panel shot of Collins. Confidence in the first frame, regret in the second. Another showed Crockett mid-response with the caption, "When you come for the Queen, you better not miss." Collins missed by a galaxy. Legal Twitter exploded. Law professors, federal judges, and advocacy groups all weighed in. A Harvard law professor tweeted, "You never challenge someone's credentials without doing your homework." Crockett delivered a textbook closing argument. Collins wasn't ready. CNN, meanwhile, was in damage control mode. Inside sources described newsroom panic, with internal meetings questioning whether Collins's approach had crossed into journalistic malpractice. That night, Collins tried to fight back on social media. "I ask tough questions. That's my job. If politicians can't handle scrutiny, maybe they're in the wrong business. Bad move." One response went viral. "Tough questions require research. What you did wasn't tough, it was lazy and hollow." Crockett exposed that. The next day, Good Morning America and Morning Joe both led with the story. CNN's own legal analyst admitted, "I know Kaitlan. She's usually better than this. But this was a disaster. Crockett is one of the most qualified people in Congress, period." Support flooded in from all sides. Speaker Nancy Pelosi issued a statement. Congresswoman Crockett showed exactly why she's one of the most valuable members of this caucus. Intelligent, poised, and ready. Even a Republican congressman told Politico, "I rarely agree with Crockett, but Collins walked into a trap, and she got what she deserved." The National Bar Association praised Crockett's dignified and commanding presence. The ACLU tweeted, "Experience matters. Crockett just reminded America why credentials still count." Within a week, Crockett's social media accounts surged by over 200,000 followers. Speaking requests rolled in. Universities, legal institutions, and advocacy groups all wanted her. A major publisher reached out about a book deal. Netflix reportedly contacted her team about a documentary project. But the most powerful response came from young black women across America. One law student from Howard posted a video. "Watching Jasmine Crockett last night. That's why I went to law school. That's what it means to be ready." The confrontation sparked broader reflection. The Atlantic ran a deep dive titled "The Crockett Standard: When Qualifications Aren't Enough." It explored how black women in politics are held to unfair, often unspoken standards. Professor Angela Davis of Georgetown appeared on MSNBC. This wasn't just bad journalism. This was a lesson in how black women's excellence is often ignored until it can no longer be denied. A federal judge tweeted, "I've had to prove myself in every courtroom I've ever stepped into. What Crockett did was for every black woman who's had to fight to be taken seriously." Professional organizations took action. The National Association of Black Journalists released a statement urging higher standards in political interviews. The American Bar Association called it a masterclass in how to counter bias with composure and fact. CNN's internal storm grew louder. Senior journalists reportedly warned execs that the network's reputation was taking a hit due to viral bait tactics. Journalism schools reacted too. Columbia announced a new curriculum module titled Preparation versus Performance: The Ethics of Political Interviews, with the Collins-Crockett moment at the center. The Poynter Institute published an in-depth case study, When Ambush Journalism Backfires. It became mandatory reading in multiple newsrooms. A journalism student's YouTube breakdown, analyzing Collins's failure to prepare, garnered over 500,000 views. "You want to ask hard questions?" the student said. "Start by doing your homework." Panel discussions followed. The Society of Professional Journalists hosted Accountability versus Ambush, featuring Pulitzer-winning journalists and media ethicists. As for Crockett, her political star rose fast. Committee appearances began drawing C-SPAN-worthy audiences. She was invited to talk policy on Meet the Press and Face the Nation. not to defend her background, but to discuss real issues. By month's end, political insiders were buzzing. Could Crockett run for Senate? For governor? A leadership role in the House? Collins had tried to minimize her. Instead, she made her a national name. The real takeaway? It wasn't just a viral moment. It was a referendum on preparation, professionalism, and the cost of underestimating. Someone who knows exactly what they're doing. Crockett had done the work. She came armed with facts, poise, and conviction. And when the moment came, she didn't flinch. In an age of sound bites and performative outrage, this was a reminder that real credentials still matter. And sometimes, justice looks like a calm, brilliant woman dismantling a poorly prepared journalist in front of millions.